Hey everybody, it's 𝗪𝗏𝗏. Welcome back. It's the White Sox Podcast coming to you from Glendale, Arizona. Opening day is getting closer. A week from Thursday, it'll be the White Sox and the Angels on the south side. I am ready. You are hopefully ready. White Sox baseball is almost back in your lives. And we don't know for sure what kind of season is coming for the White Sox, but there are signs that things are headed in the right direction. And we are seeing many surprises here at camp that if some of them, or even half of them, become a reality, this season upcoming is going to look and feel a whole lot better. So joining me to talk about this, one of the new members of the White Sox broadcast team, Connor McKnight is here. He's here in Arizona to talk about his new job coming from White Sox radio to White Sox television. And not one, not two, but 10 spring training surprises for the White Sox. We're going to talk about it next. All right, Connor McKnight is with me. Connor, we go way back.
We do.
I've known you for a long time.
An absolutely long time. It's a first time, long time here on the podcast for me, too. I've been listening for a long time, and as a radio guy, I can't not say first time, long time.
Hell, I appreciate that. That means a lot. So you, once upon a time, long time ago, but maybe not so long ago, you were an intern
Yes.
at Comcast Sportsnet.
Yes.
And I was a sports anchor reporter at the time. Our paths kind of crossed.
I ran scripts to you. You and Pat Boyle and Luke Stuckmeyer. Our job was to print out the script. Our biggest job was printing out the scripts.
That was the biggest job.
The biggest job, the highest priority. You had these scripts in your hand. You'd run them from one end of the hall to the other.
It was like the sportscasting Bible. We needed those scripts.
You had to have them. No, it was great. It was the year Jay Cutler was traded to the Bears, and I remember being in the basement and cutting tape and hearing that news. That's where I was.
Sorry to interrupt you. When you say basement,
yeah,
it literally was basement. When you watched us at NBC Sports Chicago and Comcast Sportsnet, we were literally in a basement.
We did not have. There was no cell phone service in that shed. There's none there.
That's a good one. They eventually got cell phone service. But that amazing set that you saw us in, that was in the basement.
It was incredible.
No windows.
No.
There would be nuclear war.
Yeah.
And we would not know about it.
Safest place to be.
Exactly.
Safest place to be.
But now, so you were doing radio for the White Sox radio, pre and post on the radio. Now you have joined CHSN as a our White Sox insider and White Sox field reporter. So tell us about what your job is going to be.
That's as good a way to describe it as any. It's an exciting opportunity for me. I'm thrilled to, be covering the team that I've spent a lot of years covering here in Chicago over the last, 8-9 years. 2 years as a White Sox pre and post reporter, pre and post game host rather. 2 years as a talk show host here in town, and then back for another 4. Get a chance to do some play-by-play, filling in for John and filling in for Len and DJ on the radio side, who are just incredible broadcasters, and of course, being a part of the team with you and 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and Brooke I'm really looking forward to it. And I think this season is going to bring White Sox fans a lot to look forward to. And I know we're going to talk about a lot of those guys here in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, we have a team. We have a broadcast team.
Yes.
I mean, every team has a team, but ours got really, really big. And it's going to be a lot of fun for all the fans. The fans are really going to benefit from this 100%. So you're here in Glendale with me. And if I could have had 2 surprises in camp, 3, give me 5.
Please.
I'm feeling good. And then we started looking at it. We got 10.
You got to pump those numbers up. It was a rookie number. You got to pump those numbers up. 10?
10
awesome.
surprises.
Huge.
So this again, this is spring training, and I don't want to get too excited about anything in spring because it's spring. You don't really know. It doesn't always translate to the regular season, but sometimes it does. And I don't want to just ignore what's happening here because it might turn out to be something. Right?
I think that's fair. I think it's really difficult to judge production here in Arizona, regardless of whether it's on the offensive side or the pitching side or whatever it is. But you got to make something out of it, right? And that's why you go to Arizona as a reporter, because you want to hear from coaches what the work looks like on the backfield. You want to hear from coaches how that player has been progressing over this, that, or the other skill set. That's the value here, as much as watching games. Maybe even more than watching games, to be quite honest with you.
Right. So this team is loaded with guys who have something to prove. I like the mix in there. A lot of guys on one-year deals who if they don't, either they don't have a good season this year, their career might be over, or they're trying to get a payday, whatever it is. They are motivated individually. And those veterans, they saw what happened with his team last year. They see what �crice 𝗬𝗀 is doing. And some of these guys came from winning organizations, and they signed up for this. And they didn't sign up because it was the only offer they got. Like Martin Perez is like, I want this. I want this. Right? And that says a lot about the kind of character and makeup that these guys are having or bringing to the table here.
I think it says something to the way 𝗬𝗀 and the front office have been setting the table a little bit, right? I mean, Brian Bannister has been a big and driving force in this game for a lot of years now, and he's been with the White Sox with us now be his second year, reinventing some pitching, getting guys back to the arm slots they used to be in, finding that velo, that weird angle, or whatever it is, right? There's value there. And I think what will be really interesting to see over the course of time is the effect that Ryan Fuller as the director of hitting has on this organization. Can you do and can you provide similar outputs that the pitching side has over the last, call it 18 months? I think that'll be incredibly interesting to watch for.
All right, so let's get to these 10 surprises. And you might be thinking, like, 10? Are there really 10? Trust me.
Oh, there's 10.
There are 10. Let's start with Brandon Drury, a late non-roster invitee during the offseason, 22 and 23. He was a great hitter. Won the Silver Slugger in 22, had similar numbers in 23. He's got power, could hit over 20 home runs, 80 RBIs with the Angels, and then last season, arguably the worst hitter in baseball. I mean, it was like Tim Anderson and him were like two of the worst hitters in baseball. And he revealed to us here at camp that he was dealing with a wrist injury, a hamstring injury, probably should not have played, did, and then got into all sorts of mechanical issues that he was doing with his swing, and he was just lost for the year. And now look what he's doing. He might be the best. There's a lot of good hitters in camp, but he looks really good, and he's working with guys he's worked with in the past who are coaches. He's in a good place.
Yeah, hands and hammies, right? Yeah. And I count the wrist as part of the hands because I'm not a doctor and I can do that. But hands and hammies are a lot bigger issues for hitters than I think the casual, than you really think. It's very difficult to keep your mechanics in certain situations, and it's almost impossible to hit for power when you've got a wrist. And a hamstring can affect that too. So hopefully Drury being in a more healthy place gives you that kind of run that you're looking for. You got to remember too, when Drury got traded to the Padres a couple of years ago, I mean, this is a guy that the White Sox were somewhat interested in, right? At that point in time, would have made some sense. His positional versatility is interesting, might not be great at any one spot, but certainly do you in a couple of places, whether that's second or third or maybe an outfield spot. There are definitely opportunities in a couple of places for him. And like you said, there is something to be said for veteran presence and leadership, and perhaps Drury can provide some of that, whether it be, vocally or setting an example. Right. We had for so many years 𝗭cieះ𝗶𝗹 kind of setting that example of how a veteran goes about his business. You look around this team right now, someone's going to have to fill that void. It may be Brandon Drury.
Every time I'm here in the spring, I'm always worried about April because it's cold and the White Sox don't always get off to good starts. And I'm thinking, do they have guys who can play in the cold weather? Well, a few days ago, it was freaking cold here. Believe it or not.
So cold.
It was, you throw in the wind chill, it was 30 degrees colder here than Chicago. Yeah. It was 48 degrees. There was like a little bit of a rain. And there's Brandon Drury hitting not one home run, but 2 home runs, almost hit a 3rd home run off the wall. And I'm like, you know what, Brandon Drury, he can play in Chicago in April.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good sign. And that it is a top-hand line drive that bounced off the wall in left, and it very well could have been. I mean, it's a solid barrel. So I think there's opportunities there. And like we've talked about, a couple of times already, slugging percentage is the area in which you'd like to see the most growth, I think, from a White Sox offense. They have put together some hitters that can take good at bats. Mike Tauchman and Miguel Vargas, even despite their last couple of seasons, they know how to take a pro at bat, and you're looking to see growth from them. But slugging percentage is that spot, and perhaps Drury gives you some.
You mentioned Miguel Vargas; he's number 2, and I'm looking at it was the trade. I mean, it was Eric Fedde, Mel Kopech, Tommy Pham, and he was the big piece the White Sox got back, and he batted 104 with the White Sox last season. He's added 20 pounds. Okay, all right, he's got some muscle. Good. He's hitting for power. He's cutting down on his strikeouts. And I don't think, unless you really dived into him, he's a plate discipline guy. When he was at 𝗃𝗃 Albuquerque last year with the Dodgers, he had 38 walks and 33 strikeouts. Yes, it's 𝗃𝗃, but the guy that we saw with the White Sox was completely the opposite. And here, it's the opposite of that. We are starting to see signs. It is spring training, but he's been a great surprise.
He has been, and I think for this rebuild as it stands now, he may be one of the more critical pieces, right? Because if he is a guy that sticks in that lineup, then you have a lot more to work around. And if it's not there, and that's a trade that didn't go your way, and there's two younger players in that, and Alexander Albertus, and 𝗵𝗶𝗹 that are going to be factors at some point later on. But Vargas is the guy that you've got here now in the pinstripes. I think it's fair to say that the last, 2 seasons have probably lowered what the ceiling might be for Vargas as a prospect.
He was a top 50 prospect.
I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that the plate discipline and the potential power there still has the ceiling of a player that can be very useful for a team. And we'll see what the defense looks like over the next 4 or 5 months. There's a guy in there, and the White Sox could really use it in this season and next.
Will Venable was on foul territory, and he said he was asked for a player to watch, and he said Miguel Vargas.
Pick to click.
Yeah,
there you go.
Pick to click. So we'll see. Here's another one. And this is a name that has been a frustrating one for White Sox fans because we've been through his trials and tribulations, up and down from the minor leagues. He seems like a 4A player. Maybe he is, but maybe he's not. And it's 𝗻𝗄𝗃. He and Vargas are out of minor league options, but he had a great end of the season, really hot in September. Yeah. Goes to Winter League in Venezuela. He was hitting like 480 for a while.
Murdered the baseball.
Right. And then he's here in spring training and he's doing the same thing. So it's a surprise that he's doing this. And now, is he an X factor for this whole team? 𝗻𝗄𝗃?
It's interesting. Maybe he is. Yeah. I certainly hope for the player, right? And I think when you look at his age relative to other prospects, he fits in a lot better than you might think.
He's a lot younger than people think.
He really is, and he suffers some from overexposure, I guess, having been up in the bigs for a little while. He's been part of 2 development systems with the White Sox now, with the prior front office, and now this one. I think there's every reason. He has earned his opportunities, both with the end of last year, the Venezuelan Winter League, like you mentioned, and so far in spring. We talked already about slugging percentage for this team. Okay, name for me the guys that are going to provide you some slug, and 𝗪𝗍's...
And he's bigger than you think.
Yeah, he is.
He can hit bombs.
And sure, finding a defensive spot for him may well be a challenge, right? I mean, we saw the issues that he had at second base specifically last year, a little calmer over at third, but that looks like it's going to be Vargas' spot for a while, so we'll see where it fits best, but there's no reason not to give that bat as many swings as you can, or especially early on.
This is the quagmire that is 𝗻𝗄𝗃 in his career. At 𝗃𝗃 in his career, he has an 827 OPS. Like, bring him up.
Yep.
Well, they bring him up, and his OPS in the majors is 604. Plate discipline in 163 games in the majors, he has 129 Ks, 18 walks. So, again, this is a make-it-or-break-it player.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he knows it. So we'll see what happens. He did bat .374 in September with 4 home runs. Another surprise, Korey Lee. Korey Lee, he batted .210 last season, 122 strikeouts and 17 walks. And so I was watching him the other day, and I noticed this batting stance that is very different from last year. He's putting more weight on his back foot, and he's trying not to move his head.
Yeah.
He says he's not totally comfortable with it, but what it is allowing him to do is allow the ball to get deeper, and he might not hit for the amount of power that he had before, but he'll get on base more, he'll get more doubles and get more hits and get on base more.
Yeah, it's weird to talk about a catcher using his legs to help that batting average, that on base percentage, but Korey can do that too. Yeah. And we've seen it over the last couple of days here in spring. Dude's hustling. And that matters, right? That sets that example, especially from that spot, right? You're wearing the gear and you're going to hustle. That's an example setter. And I think the other thing, too, and it matters in a rebuild, like the White Sox are in, he has put in so much work to study the pitchers that are here in camp, the guys that he won't see this year in the bigs, but has seen here in camp. That's impressive to me. It seems like a guy who is was very ready to take that next step as a veteran-type catcher. And I know Corey's, young. He hasn't been in the bigs all that long. But if you look around the roster, that's his responsibility now, and he's absolutely taken to that. And you got to credit him for it. He could be a guy that's just trying to fight off two top prospects in 𝗵𝗀 and 𝗵𝗃 and not, put that effort in to make sure that he's the best receiver he can be for all of this young pitching. He has put that work in, and I think that speaks a lot to who he is.
And he's got Walker McKinven, who came over from the Brewers, who really helped Omar Narvaez.
And
his
many
catching.
others, right?
And many others.
Yeah.
And then throw in this, if you're Corey Lee, and he got traded to the White Sox in the Kendall Graveman trade, and then soon after that, the White Sox acquire Edgar 𝗿𝗏. There's another prospect who's a catcher, and then in the offseason, they acquire Kyle Teel. So we have some competition there. But he's been a total team guy this entire spring, and he just wants what's best for the White Sox. So, listen, as we tape this, he's batting around 350 with a 600 slug in spring.
Love it.
Something's working for him. Another surprise. This is a name. Now, if you listen to the podcast about 2 weeks ago, you'll know this name. But a lot of White Sox fans don't even know who this is, and it's okay if you don't know, because honestly, I barely knew him before I got here. It's the pitcher, Justin Dunn, former first-round pick of the Mets. He was one of their top prospects for a while. Starting pitcher, hasn't pitched in the majors since 2022. And you're like, okay, he's going to make it to the majors this year? I should have said we're going to do a preview, a season prediction podcast.
Sure.
I should put in here that Justin Dunn's going to make it to the major leagues. He will make it to the major leagues this year. 1 run, 3 hits in 8 innings so far in spring, a 1.13 ERA. He only has 2 strikeouts, but here's a guy who will not give up on his dream. He's such a great story. He has so much to say. And we talk about high character in that clubhouse. This guy is like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, so as we record this, I've only been in camp for 2 days. And I'll come back for the final few. And Dunn's a guy that I'm really looking forward to watching pitch live. Because I've only been able to see it on tape. And obviously, you saw Kevin Durant come through and his brother Brian watched him pitch and stuff. And that's a lot of fun. But it goes back to something we talked about toward the beginning of the podcast. This is an organization now that wants to get its hands on those former first-rounders, guys who haven't, have hit development plateaus in other organizations, because maybe we got a thought for you. Maybe we got a fix for you. Maybe we got something that you haven't been allowed to try elsewhere, whether that's by the organization or by your own mindset, right? Like, here's how I got here. Why would I change this? And maybe the White Sox are going to be a little bit more open-minded about it. Dunn's got talent. He's absolutely got talent. Maybe this is a place that can, alter and fix some things, and you'll see him there.
Okay. All right. Here's a name that first overall pick in the Rule 5 draft, Shane Smith, who had a 3 ERA in Double-A with the Brewers last season, and he had his first outing here. He was throwing like 97, 98, and he got lit up. It's a bad
couldn't
bad
find
game.
the zone with a fastball.
Yeah. But then his next outing was against the Dodgers. Was that the next one?
Yes.
Next outing against the Dodgers, he strikes out 𝗤𝗏, Freeman, and Will Smith in the first inning. Gets 𝗤𝗏 again, strikes him out again. This is a very impressive arm. He's got Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz working with him. And as we tape this, he might make the rotation certainly to start the season. And I'm curious to see what he could bring, but that's a big surprise for this team.
The fact that Smith was left vulnerable to the Rule 5 by the Brewers was really something that sent a lot of curiosity through the bigs, because this is a very projectable arm with a lot of velocity. And I think it really says a lot. His first 2 starts here in spring and what he's done since says a lot about why he was left eligible for Rule 5 and why a lot of teams wanted to snap him up had they had that first pick. You saw what happens when that fastball isn't where he needs it to be. Velo's kicked up, and like we talked about, I don't necessarily care what production looks like in spring. But when it comes to pitching, I care about 2 things. Are you healthy? What's the fastball velo look like? Does the off-speed stuff pump in the way at the MPH that you want it to? And so far for Smith, it really has. And it's another guy who the opportunity is there for. I'm really excited to see how much they can get out of him.
I got something for you. So we don't know who the closer is going to be. I'm just looking at the clubhouse. Mike Clevenger seems like a fit for sure to be a closer. What if Shane Smith becomes the closer of this team? He's not like 22. He's older. He's like 25.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
He's got stuff that would make it work. in terms of the grand scope of things, scape's not a word. The grand scope of things, I want to see guys like Smith and Grant Taylor, who I think we'll talk about some, and kind of Mason Adams, who hopefully rebounds from whatever's going on with his. I want to see them get the starts first, right? I want to see them, I guess, if they have to, fail as starters before I move them anywhere in the pen. But I mean,
the reason why
it checks out.
Well, the reason why I put him there is that I'm assuming Drew Thorpe will start on the IL, and then he goes in the rotation.
Yeah.
And then what does that mean for Smith? That's why I'm putting him in the bullpen.
Well, and not that this wasn't on the list of 10, but I'll say, there are more and more teams willing to go to a 6-man at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anybody's had the need to pin down Will Venable or Chris Getz and say, hey, would you go to a 6, that kind of thing. But the way this pitching staff sets up over the first 2-3 months, that makes, to me, that makes as much sense of anything. If guys are pitching well enough, I think it's out there.
Okay. We got a few left here. You mentioned him, Grant Taylor. He's a surprise because, he's got the stuff. I knew he'd be good. I think he's going to be good, but this good. There's buzz. You'll hear buzz about certain players, not just in this facility, but around the Cactus League. And Grant Taylor's got that buzz. He has 4 scoreless innings before he went to minor league camp. 1 hit, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, 6 of them in 2 innings against the Dodgers. It was Dodgers, minor leaguers, but the stuff is it's wow stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it's deluxe. He wants to be top rail with that fastball, and I think we've seen that over the last 5-8 years in this game. It's changing some. Taylor's that guy, though. He wants to be up top. And I think what'll be really interesting to watch for him is kind of the prospect list. Depending on where you look, Taylor was toward the very back end of a top 100 or, right there in some spots.
Mainly because he was hurt, right?
It's 19 and a third innings last year. I think that's all he threw.
25 strikeouts and 1 walk.
Preposterous numbers. And I think he is the guy that can jump into a top 50, top 40, to be quite honest with you. If the innings, pile up the way you'd like them to this year, there is no doubt that stuff is there if he's healthy.
All right. Here's another surprise. Davis Martin. So you probably got checked out on Davis Martin because he had Tommy John surgery. He came back last year, and you look at his record, he was 0-5. But he had an ERA, I believe, in the 3s. Maybe it reached 4, but I was watching what he was doing, and he added that kick change. He's added a sinker, or is it a slider? He's added something. And he looks really good here in spring. He's been a surprise. I'll call it a mild surprise because I know what's in there. But if you're just not really paying too much attention, look out for Davis Martin this year.
This is where the job gets really fun for you and me because we get a chance to talk to these guys. We just get a feel for who they are. And I know we got a lot of calls on the White Sox postgame show last year on the radio rooting for Davis Martin. Yeah. He is such
a good dude.
An easy guy to root for.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be in his camp. He's a fighter. He doesn't care what he's got on he's going to keep battling. It's just to come for where he did 13, 14th round pick, something like that. I mean, this is a development win for the organization, and they have I guess essentially developed him twice, right? I mean, he's a guy that was a pick by the prior front office. He goes through Tommy John, the kick change you mentioned. I mean, this is a guy that is adaptable in his own right. So you got to credit him quite a bit for the work that he's put in, especially after surgery. Maybe you see him opening day, Chuck.
Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility.
Maybe.
I'm curious. That might be in the cards for him. All right. Here's a name you probably haven't even thought about, unless you're really dialing in with the White Sox. Penn Murfree. Who is Penn Murfree? Well, he was a dominant reliever with the Mariners in 2022. He was 4-0. He had a 2.99 ERA, 76 strikeouts, 18 walks in 69 innings. But as you will see with pitchers, Tommy John surgery in 23. But what's funny, it's not funny, it's just this is how baseball goes. In 2024, he's trying to recover. He was claimed off waivers by the Mets, the Braves, the Astros. A lot of good teams wanted some Penn Murfree.
Yep.
And he just wasn't ready to come back and be the guy. Well, the White Sox picked him up in the offseason. As we tape this, Penn Murfree, 5 innings, no walks, 9 strikeouts.
Yeah. I think I like to think of the White Sox front office over this winter, kind of perusing through some of the pitching, whether it's guys that have been in the bigs before or minor league dudes you can add. I like to think of him going, well, is it funky? Is it weird? Does it look weird coming off the mound? Because if it looks weird, if it's funky, we're into it. Like, we want all of that. And Murfree's got some of that to him as well. You mentioned the track record before. This is a guy who was pitching high leverage and might have been, in that closer stuff, the Mariners bullpen he was pitching in got a lot better with the additions of some of the guys that they have, Andres Munoz and so forth. But, he could have been in that spot with them if not for, injury and whatnot. Just as much a reason for him, maybe, to get some closing opportunities early on in the season as anybody else in this in the bullpen mix.
Okay, I like it. Connor, we're down to our last surprise.
Already?
Yeah, I think we've got 10 on here. This is a guy who I'm here in camp, and 2 weeks in, probably 2 weeks in, someone from the White Sox says to me, William Bergolla is the talk of minor league camp. I go, William Bergolla is the talk of minor league camp. Who's William Bergolla? He came over in the Tanner Banks trade. It was a 1-for-1 right before the deadline. He was in the Phillies organization, and he was in high A. And this is a kid. He's 5'7", 5'8", great tools, great. He's the kind of guy that when you watch him play, he's playing chess. He is playing chess. And I'll give you an example of William Bergolla. He comes up. First opportunity in a spring training game, there's a man, the third baseman's playing back on his own, lays down a bunt, gets a hit.
Love it.
All right? That's his first game. His second game comes off the bench against the A's, 3 RBIs. All right? William Bergolla, this little kid, right? He's 20 years old. Third game, plays shortstop. It was the day that they sent Colson Montgomery down to AAA. They put Bergolla in the Major League game. His first at-bat against Dylan Cease, 2-run double. He actually ended up on third. And then his fourth game, so I'm already I'm in. I'm in on William Bergolla, and then his fourth game, he beats out an infield single.
He's got a lot of interest. You're right. You're not wrong. I mean, a lot of folks talking about him. And I think what will be the thing to watch for him this year, like you said, 20 years old. I think he turns 20. I can't remember when his birthday is, but I think it's toward the latter end of the season. Where is the defense for him, right? Because it looks like the bat can play a little bit. It's certainly the organization, or rather the organization he came from was certainly up on the bat. I think a lot of scouting has. Can he play short?
Yes.
If you can,
he can play.
Right? So if you can play short.
Scouting director Chuck Garfien
there it is.
Says that he can play short.
If that's there for him, if that's on the table, that's incredible because it just raises the profile. And there is no such thing as too many shortstop prospects in an organization. That is, it's not. Don't let anybody tell you different. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. And if he's able to do that for you, then the stock is going to rise there as well.
So one of his favorite players is 𝗻𝗺cie Hi𝗁𝗍, and he's facing the Padres. And there was a ground ball up the middle on the second base side, and he showed tremendous range, got to it, threw it from his rear to first base, and almost threw out 𝗻𝗺cie Hi𝗁𝗍.
It's a tough play.
Yeah, tough play, and to almost throw out one of your heroes. And I looked at him afterwards, and he was mad. He was so pissed.
You wanted to get his guy.
He wanted to get him out. Yeah. So there's a little fire in there. His dad was a prospect in the Reds organization. So William Bergolla. Surprise.
I'm down. I'm in.
All right. So there it is. 10 surprises. Oh, actually, you know what? I have an 11th.
11th?
He just walked by.
This one goes to 11.
Mike Clevenger.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see him. He walked behind the wall before.
Yeah, because he wasn't even on this team.
No.
And, he is healthy now. He was dealing with a lot of stuff, and he hasn't given up a run yet. So there's an 11th surprise, Mike Clevenger. He could be the closer. I don't know. But he's got that closer mentality, and he's at 34 years old, or however old he is. Give me one great inning from you, and I'll take my chances.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this bullpen shakes out, both coming out of camp and as the injuries happen to whomever because that's what it is. This day and age, I'm less interested in what your 8-man bullpen looks like, and much more interested in what your 15-man bullpen looks like.
Yes.
Because that's what you need. That's what you need.
All right. Hey, this is great. Connor McKnight. This was your first time ever on the podcast.
I think it was. You've been a White Sox Weekly guest, but I think, given the fact that it's just schedules are tough to match up.
This is terrible booking by me.
Well,
I cannot believe I never had you on the podcast.
Also on the list of possibilities is that I'm forgetting. because I'm an idiot.
Well,
So it's entirely possible.
I got to look it up. We did go over our 1,000th podcast here.
Well, that's going to be a lot of research to go
so-
over. You shouldn't do that. That's a lot of
I'll
research.
put Steve Gardner, our photographer, on it. No, I'm joking. I'm totally joking. All right. Connor McKnight with the 11 surprises, as it turns out, here at spring training. And let's hope the White Sox are a surprise team in 2025. We all can use that.
Absolutely.
All right. That is a wrap for this edition of the White Sox podcast. Big time thanks to 𝗬𝗏𝗏, who has been killing it
Edgar.
back in Chicago, putting out all these podcasts for all of you to listen. It is much appreciated. 𝗻𝗁𝗏 Harrelson, take it away.
All right, Chuck, this edition of the White Sox podcast is over.